I'm not a Meghan Markle fan and I don't defend her. And there's all sorts of inconsistencies and hypocrisies. But, you know, she's an actress. She's not the brightest cookie in the basket.
No, she delivered it like an actress delivered it. An opera responded going, wow. Oh, I was there, hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a worst royal engagement I ever did, a royal wedding I ever did.
What if the most talked about royal outsider didn't run from the cameras, but actually played them better than anyone expected? That flips the whole story instantly. Because when it comes to Meghan Markle, nothing about stepping back from the spotlight feels random at all. Instead, it comes off as controlled, calculated, and executed with serious precision. Most royals stick to a long-established routine built on tradition, patience, and carefully planned appearances over many years. Meghan stepped in and switched that up fast. Rather than blending into that system, she brought a completely different energy. It was a mix of sharp self-promotion, emotional storytelling, and perfectly timed visibility that kept people watching every single move. And this is where things start to feel unusual. Royal pregnancies are typically huge public moments, with cameras everywhere, photographers lined up, and constant coverage capturing that polished royal image people expect to see. But in Meghan's case, that moment didn't feel delayed. It felt like it vanished completely. Arthur Edwards, one of the most respected royal photographers ever, revealed something that instantly got people talking. He said he was told to stay away. This is someone who documented multiple generations of royals, capturing some of the most personal and iconic moments, including those involving Princess Diana. And suddenly, during one of the biggest royal milestones, he's kept at a distance? Think about that for a second. The very lens that usually brings the public closer was completely shut out. But here's where things take a turn. The attention didn't drop at all. It just moved in a different direction. Instead of traditional photo moments, the spotlight shifted toward controlled interviews, emotional documentary-style clips.
Diana was delivering Harry or William. There was complete quiet. No one knew. Cameras couldn't get even anywhere near the hospital.
Sure, but we didn't have mobile phones then.
What?
We didn't have mobile phones then.
But it was so private, and there's a dignity with privacy. Yes. And I certainly wouldn't, if I were pregnant, dance like well I can't.
You're going to see or hear Meghan Markle's belly pop. You're going to see these people's faces. And I can tell you that one of these people is now speaking out.
And major streaming projects that kept Meghan right in focus. So while photographers were pushed aside, the visibility stayed strong, just on her terms. That's not stepping back, that's playing the game differently. She didn't just enter the royal world, she stepped straight into the modern media system and learned how to use it fast. Every appearance, every statement, even every moment of silence felt deliberate, timed, and placed exactly where it needed to be. This isn't about royal titles or formal ceremonies anymore. This is about image control on a completely different level. Why are there barely any natural, widely recognized pregnancy photos of Meghan Markle? And what exactly did Arthur Edwards reveal after all that silence? Royal stories usually begin with celebration. Big announcements, balcony appearances, cameras flashing everywhere. But this one didn't follow that path at all. It started with a gap, a noticeable shift, and a media slowdown that had people asking questions right away. When Kate Middleton steps outside, it instantly becomes headline history. Photos everywhere, coverage locked in within minutes. But when Meghan Markle stepped out, the message felt completely different. Suddenly, it was like everything paused, cameras pulling back, access limited, the usual flow completely interrupted. It almost felt like the entire press system hit an unexpected stop at the same time. Arthur Edwards, someone who spent over 4 decades documenting royal history.
Are you buying that excuse that Meghan Markle used a fake belly to protect her real belly? I'm not buying this.
Actually, this does look like a moon bump to me.
She is literally kneeling all the way down. One of those people reached out to me, but not before this person reached out to the newspapers, complaining that the palace was literally threatening her, that the palace had tried to bribe her, and when that didn't work, because she really dislikes what's happening and she wants to come clean, and she has been trying to tell people.
Couldn't ignore how unusual this felt. This is someone who has seen everything up close. Major milestones, public appearances, defining moments that shaped how the world views the monarchy. He's captured it all with consistency and precision. But when it came to Meghan's biggest chapter, the pattern shifted completely. No formal photo opportunities, no familiar media access, no clear moment for those expected images, just silence. And not the quiet kind people overlook, the kind that instantly makes people start asking questions. For someone often associated with openness and sharing her story, this felt like the complete opposite. It wasn't just reduced visibility, it was a full shift in how access was handled. Even experienced media figures were left wondering what exactly changed. Naturally, questions spread fast. Was this about protecting personal space, or was it about shaping the narrative more tightly? Because there's a big difference between privacy and full restriction. And when that level of control meets official structures and careful coordination, it creates a situation people can't stop analyzing. At the same time, something else was happening. Meghan was still highly visible, but in a very specific way. Carefully selected appearances, controlled content, and moments that kept her in the spotlight without full access. The public kept seeing her, but not in the way they were used to with traditional royal coverage. That contrast made everything feel even more intense.
Moon bump theory.
Well, basically, it suggests that Meghan didn't actually give birth to these children and that she was wearing a prosthetic bump. And of course, lots of medical experts have come out looking at that video and saying it's just impossible for someone who's literally 9 months pregnant and about to give birth to dance in that way.
And I travelled the world with him, and I did really enjoy working with him. But, now I really don't care if I ever see him again, because the way he's behaved towards the king and our Queen and his brother and his sister-in-law is appalling.
On one side, a long-standing system built on openness during major milestones. On the other, a modern approach focused on precision and control. Two completely different playbooks colliding in real time. Meanwhile, media outlets kept pushing for clarity, discussions kept growing, coverage kept building, and expectations kept rising. And through all of it, Arthur Edwards waited for that one clear image that could explain everything. But it never came. And just when the silence already felt unusual, what happened next took things to another level completely. It started with a clip, just a few shaky seconds, but the reaction was immediate. Meghan Markle, visibly pregnant, lowers into a squat, rises back up, and turns with surprising ease. That short moment spread everywhere almost instantly. People couldn't stop replaying it. Online communities jumped in fast. Frames paused, zoomed, slowed down, analyzed from every possible angle. What looked like a simple movement suddenly turned into a full debate. Some viewers questioned whether that kind of motion seemed typical, while others pushed back just as strongly, pointing out that every pregnancy experience is different. Different perspectives came in, discussions expanded, and the internet split into sides almost instantly. On platforms like Twitter and Reddit, timelines were built, clips were broken down, and conversations kept growing. YouTube creators jumped in too, turning those few seconds into long-form breakdowns.
But whole, how many weeks pregnant was she supposed to be? Was it about 8 weeks? And she looks as if she's at least 5 months pregnant. And also, why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? It's not supposed to be brown.
I mean, obviously, when William was born and Harry was born and George and Charlotte and Louis, we got great pictures outside the hospital. I remember, and William and Catherine especially, they made such an effort to show the whole world.
Adding even more layers to a moment that just kept gaining attention. Treating that moment like something to investigate, the tone shifted fast. What should have been simple celebration turned into a wave of doubt, theories, and intense curiosity. Headlines leaned into mystery instead of joy, and that only pulled more people deeper into the conversation. At the same time, official responses stayed minimal. Statements were limited, and there was no direct response to the growing noise online. But instead of calming things down, that silence did the opposite. The less clarity people got, the more they started to speculate. Meanwhile, Meghan's public image stayed highly polished. Soft lighting, clean visuals, and carefully curated photos kept appearing. Everything looked refined and intentional, almost like magazine-style content instead of natural, spontaneous moments. And that contrast made people look even closer. People weren't just watching anymore. They were searching for something more real, something unfiltered. Then another detail dropped, and it added even more tension to the situation. Arthur Edwards confirmed that photographers had been instructed to avoid certain angles or specific moments. That one statement changed everything. What some people saw as privacy, others started seeing as restriction. And once that idea took hold, the conversations didn't slow down. They multiplied. Discussions got louder, more divided, and way more intense. And with every passing day, The same question kept coming back again and again.
Me is her lack of understanding and recognition of the role that she had or has in the royal family. And, you know, both of them have been on the record repeatedly saying they don't want to be living their lives through the lens of a camera and in a goldfish bowl and all of that. And then they take the camera into the most private of rooms where you're about to deliver your baby.
If everything was straightforward, why? Did it feel so tightly controlled? Why did access seem so limited during such a major moment? Every big story has that one voice that shifts everything. And in this situation, it didn't come from official sources. It came from someone unexpected. Not a royal insider, not someone with a title, just a person moving around the edges of the Sussex spotlight. But the moment she spoke, things started to shift. She suggested that the picture-perfect story didn't fully match what she believed was happening. And right after that, everything around her seemed to change instantly. The reaction felt cold and immediate. Conversations slowed down, messages stopped getting responses, and doors that once felt open suddenly seemed closed. There was this quiet tension in the air, like an unspoken signal telling people not to repeat what they heard. For longtime royal watchers, this kind of pattern didn't feel new. Situations like this have surfaced before, where speaking out, even slightly, led to noticeable consequences. Names like Paul Page, a former royal guard, had already shown how quickly things can shift when private experiences become public discussion. According to reports, this person appeared to go through a similar pattern. What started as calm and polite communication reportedly became more serious over time. Calls felt heavier, interactions became more distant, and opportunities that once existed seemed to disappear without clear explanation. And here's the twist that made everything even louder. The more pressure people believed was building around her, the more attention her words started getting online. People began asking a new question.
Is to say that this has been driven by Meghan?
I think you've got to look. Harry was the greatest of all the royals as far as we were concerned. And he suddenly turned into probably, as I say, the most unhappiest and difficult to work with. And there's only one common denominator in that, is when he got married.
Why would such a strong reaction follow something that seemed like a simple claim? That contrast made the situation even harder to ignore. She didn't have a massive platform or a media team behind her, but the way things unfolded around her made people pay attention in a completely different way. Because sometimes it's not just about what's said, it's about how others react that raises the biggest questions. Inside royal systems, loyalty has always mattered. Staying aligned with expectations can carry just as much weight as the message itself. And when someone steps slightly outside of that, the response can be quick and very controlled. Behind the polished appearances and carefully timed public moments, there's always structure. Every detail, every response, even every silence, it all fits into a larger system designed to manage how things are seen. As the discussion around Meghan kept growing, some observers started to believe the response wasn't about shutting things down completely, but about guiding the story in a specific direction, not reacting loudly, but responding with precision. Because if there's one thing that system has mastered over time, it's this. When pressure builds, the response isn't chaos, it's coordination. It doesn't erase controversies. It manages them carefully, like a long-established system built on timing, structure, and control. Every move feels measured, every moment handled with purpose, and every response placed exactly where it needs to be. Timing, and a sharp awareness of public perception, that's what everything seemed to come down to. Behind closed doors, conversations about media strategy were constant. Every word, every sentence,
May 6th at 3:02 a.m., Brockmore Cottage. This is a public announcement. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex used the services of a surrogate. We apologize for any misunderstandings. To this day, nobody has debunked that tweet as fake. In order for a child to be in the line of succession, it has to come from the body of the woman. Why would Meghan Markle be faking all those big stomachs? You know, that big belly, the belly swaying back and forth. She was huge. She was overdue. Now when Spare came out,
every response had to pass through layers of review. Nothing moved forward unless it matched perfectly with how it would look to the public. The pressure was high, and no one wanted to be the one who made things worse. As online conversations started heating up, one phrase kept coming back again and again. Never complain, never explain. It sounds calm and controlled on the surface, but in reality, it often means staying silent and waiting things out. But here's the problem. The internet doesn't just move on. Once something is out there, it gets saved. shared and brought back again and again, silence doesn't erase questions, it makes them louder. While Meghan continued building a strong, polished image overseas through global projects, things back in London felt much more complicated. Officials were trying to balance two difficult priorities at the same time: protect the reputation of the monarchy, but also avoid looking like they were stepping in too aggressively. That balance created a very careful, almost cautious communication style. Updates became less direct, responses felt more controlled, and press briefings started sounding vague. Answers were given, but they often felt incomplete. Even experienced figures like Arthur Edwards were left on the outside looking in. Access that once felt routine now seemed limited. And that shift became symbolic. It wasn't just about one situation, it reflected how tightly information was being handled overall. Not removed, not erased, just carefully managed and kept out of public reach. At its core, the monarchy has always leaned on.
I'd say step one would be to confirm this room, find out where it was, find out that very room, find out which room it was, and go look at it. If it's at that hospital or wherever it is she says she was, go make sure that's the hospital room, that it exists there.
Two key pillars: tradition and stability. Every decision connects back to those foundations, especially when public conversations start touching on sensitive areas, and when discussions began moving toward timelines, titles, and royal processes. The tension rose even more. These aren't small topics. They connect directly to how the entire system works. For generations, the structure of succession has been treated with extreme care. Even small questions can feel major within that framework. So when online conversations started pushing into that territory, the usual calm approach suddenly felt much more serious and much more urgent. At one point, a press secretary was even rumored to have mastered a strange skill: answering direct questions without actually giving direct answers.
Stress there, not even a little bit of stress, none. And there should be there because she's getting ready to have one of the worst painful things of her life, having a baby. And when that happens, you look forward to the event, but you don't look forward to that pain. And it's so bad, a lot of women can't remember it.
Everything became so carefully worded that even simple responses felt hard to fully understand. People were listening closely, but still walking away without anything concrete. History has already shown how sensitive royal moments can be. Big shifts have happened before when personal situations became public discussions. But now, in a fully connected digital world, everything moves faster and louder than ever. This isn't the era of quiet headlines anymore. This is the era of instant reactions, viral clips, and nonstop commentary. Every moment, every pause, every image, every expression can be captured, shared, and replayed within seconds. What used to stay behind palace walls can now become a global conversation overnight. Commentators didn't just observe, they analyzed everything in real time. They reacted, broke things down, and turned ongoing events into continuous discussion. It stopped feeling like distant tradition and started feeling like live content people couldn't stop watching. And that's where everything shifted. The focus wasn't just on roles or royal structure anymore, it was on how quickly public perception could change, not over years, but in days, sometimes even hours. Because today, one viral post can reshape how people see everything. It doesn't take a major event anymore. It can be one clip, one contradiction, one unexpected detail that sets everything off. And in this situation, attention suddenly turned to one detail no one expected. Initial reports stated that a respected medical professional was involved in the birth of the Sussex child. It sounded clear, organized, and fully aligned with official communication. But then confusion entered the picture. A separate statement connected to the doctor's family suggested something different. And just like that, uncertainty took over. Now there were two versions of the same story circulating at the same time, one coming from official sources, the other being reported elsewhere. And the public didn't know which one to believe. That single inconsistency changed everything. Because for an institution known for precision and structure, even the smallest contradiction stands out in a major way. It wasn't just noticed, it was amplified instantly. Online communities jumped in fast, and the discussion spread everywhere. People started comparing timelines, statements, and tiny details like they were putting together a full puzzle. Everyday users turned into investigators, breaking down every piece of information they could find. And just like that, one unexpected detail turned into a major talking point. It pulled even more attention into a story that was already under intense focus. Instead of clearing things up, the palace leaned into its most familiar move: Silence. No detailed explanations, no direct corrections, just a carefully managed pause that left everything hanging in the air. But that silence didn't calm anything down. It did the opposite. It created a gap, and that gap filled up fast with questions, theories, and nonstop speculation. Because when there's no clear answer, people start connecting the dots themselves. Every missing detail became a talking point. Every unanswered question turned into something people wanted to solve. And online, nothing stays quiet for long, especially when the spotlight is already on. By the time things slowed down, one thing became clear. The royal system may be highly skilled at protecting internal matters, but the modern world doesn't operate the same way. Information moves fast, and attention doesn't just disappear. There's an unspoken rule now. If something isn't explained, people will explore it anyway. And in today's digital space, that means trending discussions, shared clips, and constant analysis. Within royal tradition, silence has always carried meaning. It's not just about saying nothing, it's about communicating without words. And few understood that better than the late queen. She didn't rely on statements for every message. Sometimes the smallest details spoke the loudest. People who followed royal appearances closely knew that every object, every placement, every background detail was intentional. During one of her Christmas broadcasts, viewers noticed something subtle but powerful. A framed photo that had been there before was suddenly gone. No announcement, no explanation, just an empty space where it once stood. At first glance, it seemed minor, but for those paying attention, it felt significant. Because nothing in those settings is random. Every item is chosen, placed, and approved with precision. Some explanations tried to downplay it. Layout changes, setup adjustments, simple visual updates. But longtime observers weren't convinced it was that simple. Royal presentation is detailed, and even the smallest shift can carry meaning. When something familiar disappears, it naturally raises questions. The Queen never engaged in public back and forth or direct responses. Her approach was always measured, controlled, and subtle. But moments like that showed how a quiet change could still send a strong signal without saying a single word. Calm, controlled, and unmistakably precise. Years of image management wrapped into one quiet moment. No statements, no confrontation. Just a shift that carried weight. That's how this system works. Precision over noise. Signals over speeches. But history shows something important. When things go quiet at that level, it doesn't always mean the situation is over. It can mean something deeper is unfolding. And what came next made that silence feel even more significant. Most royal stories build toward a big, visible moment. But this one took a completely different turn. As questions around the birth reached peak attention, focus shifted quickly to one specific place, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. This location was widely mentioned, so naturally people expected clear confirmation. It seemed simple. Verify the details and settle the conversation, or step in and provide clarity. At first, there was a public congratulations message shared online that appeared to align with expectations. But then things became less clear. Additional comments later created even more questions, especially when discussions about certain circulating clips began. The response didn't directly confirm or deny specifics. Instead, it focused on general policies and timing, referencing guidelines that were in place during that period, careful wording, structured, precise, but open to interpretation. And that's where the confusion grew, because when responses avoid direct clarity, people start reading between the lines. Some saw it as standard protocol. Others saw it as intentionally vague. That kind of communication doesn't close conversations. It extends them. And in today's digital world, extended conversations mean more attention, more breakdowns, and more speculation. Online communities jumped in again. People started comparing visuals, analyzing backgrounds, and zooming into every available detail. Screenshots, clips, side-by-side comparisons. It was everywhere. It turned into a full breakdown process. Everyday users examined everything, from room layouts to equipment placement, trying to piece together what made sense. Each detail became part of a bigger picture people were trying to understand. Meanwhile, the hospital stayed consistent, professional, careful, and focused on privacy standards. No extra commentary, no added clarification, just the same measured response. And through all of this, Meghan's public image remained polished and controlled. Every appearance, every release, every visual stayed consistent, refined, and highly curated. In a world where everything spreads instantly, that level of control only made people look even closer. The biggest question surrounding one of the most talked about families somehow stayed unanswered. And that alone made people stop, pause, and take a closer look. Because usually when something reaches this level of attention, answers follow, clarifications come out, timelines get cleaned up, and the conversation starts to settle. But here, that didn't really happen. Instead, the silence stayed. And just when it felt like everything might slowly fade away, a familiar voice stepped back into the spotlight again. Arthur Edwards, a veteran royal photographer with decades of experience, brought everything right back into focus. This isn't someone new to the scene. This is someone who has seen generations of royal moments unfold right in front of him. He's captured history, major milestones, emotional moments, and everything in between. So when someone like that speaks up, people listen. And what he said? It stuck. He revealed that they were told to stay away. That one statement carried serious weight. Because it wasn't just about access, it hinted at something deeper. It suggested a pattern that people started connecting across multiple moments, decisions, and layers of communication. And once people began lining everything up, the restricted photography, the unclear timelines, the carefully managed responses, and even outside confirmations that didn't fully match, it created a much bigger picture. This stopped feeling like a single moment. It started to feel like a system, and that's where the conversation really took off. Because now, it wasn't just about what happened, it was about how everything was handled. And in a world where information moves instantly, how something is handled can matter just as much as what actually happened. So naturally, people started asking bigger questions. Was this about privacy? That's a fair point. Public figures deal with constant attention, and setting boundaries is completely reasonable. Not everything needs to be public, and there's nothing unusual about wanting personal moments to stay personal. But here's where things get complicated. When those boundaries feel consistent, structured, and highly controlled across multiple situations, people don't just accept it. They start analyzing it. They start comparing. They start asking why this moment looked different from others. And that's exactly what happened here. Because for many observers, it didn't just feel like privacy. It felt like precision. And that leads to the second question. Was this about control? Not in a dramatic sense, but in a strategic one. About shaping what is seen, what is shared, and what stays out of view. Because in today's media landscape, controlling the narrative is powerful. Sometimes even more powerful than the narrative itself. And when visibility doesn't disappear, but instead shifts into carefully selected appearances, controlled interviews, and highly polished visuals, it creates a very specific kind of presence. You're still visible, but on your own terms. And that's exactly what made the situation stand out. Because the attention never dropped. It just moved. It moved away from traditional coverage and into modern formats. Streaming content, curated visuals, structured storytelling, all of it kept the spotlight active, just in a different way. And for a lot of people watching, that contrast felt impossible to ignore. On one side, a long-standing royal system built on openness during major milestones. On the other, a modern approach focused on timing, precision, and control. Two completely different styles meeting in the same moment. And when those two styles don't fully align, it creates tension. Not loud, obvious tension, but subtle tension. The kind that makes people look closer, rewatch moments, and start asking questions. And that's exactly what happened here. Because once that first question appears, it doesn't stay alone. It multiplies. People start going back, revisiting older clips, comparing timelines, and connecting details that may not have seemed important before. And in today's digital world, that process happens fast, really fast. Within hours, conversations spread across platforms. Clips get shared, slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed from every angle. Discussions grow, opinions form, and before you know it, what started as one question turns into a full, ongoing conversation. And here's the key part, that conversation doesn't need constant updates to keep going. Once it starts, it feeds itself. People bring in their own interpretations, their own observations, their own perspectives. And that's why silence doesn't stop it. It actually fuels it. Because when there's no clear answer, people don't stop. They dig deeper. They look harder. They try to fill in the gaps themselves. And that's exactly what kept this story alive. Even without direct responses, the conversation kept moving. It kept growing. It kept evolving. And the more it grew, the more it shifted from a single topic into something bigger. It became a conversation about perception, about media, about how stories are shaped in real time, Because at its core, this isn't just about one moment, it's about how modern audiences interact with information, how they question it, how they analyze it, and how quickly they react to anything that feels different from what they expect. And that's where things get really interesting, because expectations play a huge role in how stories are received. When people expect one type of coverage and see something completely different, it stands out immediately. And that contrast creates curiosity, and curiosity leads to attention, and attention keeps the story alive, even when no new information is added. That's the power of perception. And in this case, perception became the main driver of the entire conversation, not just what was shown, but how it was shown. Not just what was said, but what wasn't said. Every detail, every decision, every moment of silence, it all became part of the bigger picture. And that's why this didn't fade like other stories usually do, because it wasn't just about facts, it was about interpretation. And interpretation doesn't have a clear endpoint. It keeps going as long as people are paying attention. And clearly, people are still paying attention. Because even now, the same core questions remain. Why did things feel so controlled? Why did access seem so limited? Why did certain details not fully line up? And why did the responses stay so measured? Those questions didn't disappear. They stayed, and they continue to drive the conversation forward. And that's what makes this situation different. It didn't follow the usual pattern. It didn't rise, peak, and fade. It transformed into something ongoing, a modern media puzzle. One that keeps evolving every time someone new looks at it, every time someone revisits it, every time someone adds a new perspective. And in a world where everything moves fast, the stories that last are the ones that keep people thinking, the ones that don't, have simple answers, the ones that feel layered. And this is definitely one of those stories. So now it comes down to you. After everything you've seen, everything you've heard, and everything that's been discussed, what do you think? Was this simply about privacy and setting boundaries? Or was it a carefully managed approach to controlling how the story was presented? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one of those situations where every perspective adds something new. And if you made it this far, don't just watch and move on. Hit that like button so more people can see this. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And share this with anyone else who's been following this story. Join the conversation, and I'll see you on the next one.